Good evening, ladies, or good afternoon. Yeah, so this is the last class before Rosh Hashana. Yes, and then we'll have another one before Yom Kippur on a Monday night. Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, so we're going to go into Zechronos, hopefully, and maybe Shofros. Okay, before we go into Zechronos, right, Mussaf of Rosh Hashana, I would like to say something about what happened last week in Ramot, a week and a half ago. So painful. We spoke about it last week, but there's something I wanted to say. One of my students from Bnos Chava years ago lost her grandmother in a pigua or Rehov Yafo, and her grandmother used to go every Wednesday to shop for a homebound lady. And when she went, that was one of those Wednesdays, the last Wednesday of her life. Yeah, she was going to shop for a homebound lady, and she was killed by an Arab bomb. And my student went to America to be with her mother when her mother sat Shiva. And she came back to school afterwards, and she said, she quoted a Gemara, and people told her, people showed her, and people showed the family. You know, it says, Shluchei mitzvah enam nizokim, people who are sent to do a mitzvah do not get damaged, do not get hurt. So what happened over here? So the Gemara says, yeah, it's true. First of all, Shluchei mitzvah enam nizokim, where it's not a dangerous place, where it's a place where it could be a dangerous place, then that rule doesn't apply. But it's something else also. It says, if a person dies while doing a mitzvah, it means their time to die came, and Hashem gave them the zchus of leaving this world while doing a mitzvah. This is what my student told me, and then my husband actually showed it to me in the Gemara. And so this is what happened to at least one. It happened to many of those people. You know, they were on their way to Kailul, and one of those people, there was a car that stopped by and wanted to give people a ride, and he was in the car already. One of these Kedoshim, he was in the car already, and then he saw that there was an older person who also needed a ride. And he said, you know what, he needs it more than I do. And he went out, he said, I'll give up my place and this person should go in. And so that person went in. And he was by the bus stop. And he was killed. So he had this is what the Gemara says, he had this chus. It was his time to go. And he had this chus, Hashem gave him this chus to go while doing such a mitzvah. So he was a kadosh because he was killed for being a yid, and he was even more kadosh because look what he did. Look at the chesed, the unbelievable chesed. He was in the car already. He just said he'll give up his place. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, say, I think I mentioned it last week, say before me psukim of Malchus so that you integrate that I'm Melech, and say before me psukim of Zechronos, so I should remember you for the good. Hashem doesn't forget anything, but that I should pay attention to you. I should show you that I'm paying attention to you for the good, for good things. I should judge you favorably. And how? With the shofar. Now you see, people think there's no tshuva on Rosh Hashana. You don't say vidui on Rosh Hashana. The way I heard from Big Talmud Chacham many years ago, on the day that you're crowning the king, you don't put your dirty laundry in front of him. So we don't say vidui, we don't mention chatoim, we don't mention averis. But we certainly do the Kabbalah part of tshuva, to be makabel, to do Hashem's will from now on, and we certainly do the chareta part of tshuva. In Malchios, we have Kabbalah lahaba. If we make Hashem melech, if we're declaring Hashem as melech, that means we're accepting upon ourselves to do his will. So we need to think of things that we can improve on. And especially when the shofar is blown, during Tkiyah Shofar. I remember my mother, Shalom, many years ago, when I was still a teenager. She did it in such a way that we didn't feel that she was pressuring us with Yiddishkeit, in our Yiddishkeit. It was like she believed in us that we want to do the right thing, and it helped us to want to do the right thing. She said to me when I came home from shul, we came home from shul, from yeshiva, and we were sitting by the Suda, Rosh Hashana, and I remember one Rosh Hashana, she said to me, for sure you must have thought of such wonderful Kabbalos while you were listening to the shofar. And I was embarrassed to tell her that I didn't. I didn't realize that's what I should be doing. I didn't say anything. But from then on, I really tried. That was the push from my mother. Yeah, in such a beautiful way. I'm sure you must have made some wonderful Kabbalos while you were listening to the shofar. And the Rambam says that's what we should be doing. Because even though the mitzvah of Tkiyah Shofar, that's Gzeres HaKasav, it's what the Torah tells us, and we do it because it's a mitzvah. And in fact, the main kavanah we have to have, and the main intent we have to have when we're listening to the shofar is that we're doing the mitzvah. But then you can add in certain intents. And one of them is, I'm able to do Hashem's will. Shapru ma'asechem, fix your deeds. Lift yourself above the nonsense of the world. This is what the Rambam says. And so what part of tshuva is in Zichronos? It's saying that Hashem doesn't forget anything. Ein shichachal l'pnei kisei kvodecha. That's how we end off before the bracha Zocher Habris. Before we say Baruch Atah Hashem Zocher Habris, we say Ki ein shichachal l'pnei kisei kvodecha. Hashem, you don't forget anything. So we're asking you, Ba'akedas Yitzchak Lizaro Hayom Barachamim Tizkar. Please, Hashem, remember Akedas Yitzchak for his children today with Rachamim. So, if an idea is like this, if we realize it emphasizes Hashem doesn't forget anything, that should awaken within us regret that we have done things that we would wish would not be remembered, but Hashem remembers everything. However, if we do tshuva, there's nothing to remember, unless we do tshuva me'ahava. If we do tshuva me'yira, it's erased. If we do tshuva me'ahava, from love of Hashem, because we have so much hakaras hatov to Hashem, we think of all the chasadim Hashem did, we awaken our love to Hashem, and we feel Hashem does so much for us, how could I go against His will? Oy! That's ahava. That's love. So when you do tshuva from ahava, then, then what's remembered? All those places where we had Averis become mitzvos. I think I mentioned that the Ger Rebbe was passing by a group of Chilonim, secular Jews. He said to them, I'm jealous of you. If you do tshuva, you'll have a lot more mitzvahs than me. All your Averis will be replaced with mitzvahs. Now, in the beginning of the first pasuk in Zichronos is Hashem remembering Noach. It's a pasuk from Parshas Noach. Vayizkar Elokim es Noach v'eskol hachaya v'eskol behema asher ito bateva vayashoku hamayim. It says on the first day of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashana, Charvu hamayim, the water of the Mabul dried out. So they still couldn't go out of the teva yet, but the water was dried out. And so then Rashi says, there's a question here. Vayizkar Elokim es Noach. Shouldn't it say Vayizkar Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the midah of Rachamim? Why does it say Elokim when Hashem is having such rachmanas on Noach? He's drying up the water, and they'll soon go out of the teva. So why does it say Elokim, which is Lashon Din? And the answer is, says Rashi, Tfilas hatzadikim ma'apeches midas hadin, or hofeches midas hadin, or midas harachamim. The tefillah of tzadikim turns the midas hadin into midas harachamim. And we could all become tzadikim in a minute. If we accept upon ourselves to do Hashem's will, then our tefillah too, Be'ezus Hashem, could turn midas hadin into midas harachamim. And we say that also in Lamnat Seach, what you say 7 times, the Perek Mem Zayin, chapter 47 in Tehillim. Right before Tkiyas Shofar, and one of the psukim is in that Mizmar, in that Perek in Tehillim, Allah Hashem Bisru, Allah Elokim Bisrua, Hashem B'Kol Shofar, Allah Elokim B'Trua. Elokim goes up. Literally, like the pshat is, Elokim is elevated with the sound of the shofar. Trua is the most broken sound. 9 parts. 9, 2, 2, 2, yeah. And that's a person doing tshuva. That symbolizes the Baal Tshuva. That's all of us. All of us who have to do tshuva for anything. When we feel broken about our averis, but not to wallow in them, not to wallow in the brokenness. Feel broken and go weiter. Yeah, then Hashem is elevated because people are doing tshuva. Because Baruch is always elevated, but it does say that way people are makir. People recognize Hashem more when they realize that tshuva could be done. So there's hope, and that could bring us closer. When we know when there's hope, so then you try harder to become closer to Hashem. So that's according to the pshat. According to the drash, Allah Elokim Bisrua. Midas Hadin goes back up to Shemaim, goes away with the Trua. Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Midas Harachamim comes with the sound of the shofar. Shofar symbolizes the tzaddikim that didn't sin. Shofar is shafir, beautiful. Shapru Ma'asechem, improvement, perfection. Yeah, so the person becomes a tzaddik. That's true, but the person becomes a tzaddik. And we should know the Akedah, that Kodesh Baruch Hu, remember, we always talk about this chus of the Akedah. This chus of the Akedah. Because really, Rav Dessler and Mechtav Leo, he talks about that zechus avos is zakus avos. This chus that we have because Hashem promised the avos that we would be here forever, Klal Yisrael would be here forever. But it's also zakus. Zakus is pureness. The pureness, 1 minute please. Okay, I had to hear what was going on. There's an organization now where if the police come to try to arrest the bacher because he didn't show up for army duty, Baruch Hashem, all the G'dalim are saying, don't even go to the office there. Just don't. That's it. Keep learning Torah. That's the biggest protection. So now when they come to try to arrest someone, they right away call this number, and this number they call all the people, and people come running there, and usually when people come running, the police go away. So we hope that happened earlier tonight, and the police went away. This was in Geula, and they said an address, and people came running, and then the next thing was they told us that the police had gone away and not arrested the bacher. And I hope that's what's going to happen now also. Please, let's daven. Let's daven for everyone. Hashem, please help us. Do not let any bacher get arrested. They don't realize, Nebuch, the people don't realize. They don't realize that this is the protection. Another bacher learning, another young man learning is the protection. They don't realize we're experiencing nisim every day. They sent the Houtim, the Chutim from Taiman, from Yemen. They sent another one today, another ballistic missile. Baruch Hashem, nothing happened. Yeah, I was outside then, and I went into a building, and I saw a father and a mother walking with their children, and the children looked a little scared, so the father tells them, don't worry, it's only the Taimanim sending, they're throwing sandals. That's how you calm down the kids. Zolkim sandalim. And people don't get too scared over here, Baruch Hashem. But we really have to daven, it's no joke. And they say, stay in for 10 minutes and don't leave because parts of the missile could be flying around. Chas v'shalom. I did go into a building, and somebody was very nice and brought me a chair in the hall, and she invited me into her house, but I didn't feel like it. Brought me a chair and a drink, and Cloudy Straw was very wonderful. And so, I hope we get a message that this bacher was not arrested. Ladies, please daven for every yeshiva bacher. They don't realize they take away one yeshiva bacher from learning Torah. They're taking away protection. This is what the Torah tells us. This is what the Gemara tells us. Torah magna umatzla. The Torah is the protection. They don't chap. Why are all these nisim happening? It's only in the schos HaTorah. Only. It's very painful. Very, very painful. But Yidden don't realize that Nebuch, our brothers who don't know. It's Rachmanis on them. They have to daven. Everyone should do tshuva. Okay. Back to when I went by the Akedah, that Mesiras Nefesh, that love for Hashem, that Dveikus became so strong in the DNA of in the genes that they gave over the Avos Hakdoshim, Abraham and Yitzchak, right? And then Yaakov, but I'm saying Abraham and Yitzchak by the Akedah gave those genes over. Be Yerusha as an inheritance to all of Klal Yisrael, till the end of all generations. So that's why you have the Pintel Yid, you have Yidden who are so far away, and they wake up. The Pintel Yid is awoken. Some of you may know the story about Nebuch, a doctor. Years ago, one of my students even knew, some of my students from Europe even knew exactly where that shul was, where this happened. This was during the Holocaust. Years before, there was a doctor Nebuch, a Jewish doctor, who it's so hard to say it, but he converted to Catholicism and married a Goyish wife and lived like that for years. And when the Nazis came into his town, they came to him and they said, if you're really a Catholic, if you're really a devoted Catholic, we'll leave you alone. But of course, that wasn't even true, because anyone who had Jewish blood, they got it. They knew he had Jewish blood, even though he had converted. They didn't care. They killed anyone who had Jewish blood that they knew about. But this is a game they played. They told him, we'll spare you if you're really a devoted Catholic. So they took him into the shul, and people were watching from their windows, and they saw this happening. They said to him, go open this. This was the Aron Kodesh. Now take this out. That was the Sefer Torah. Now throw it down on the floor, Hashem Yishmor, and trample it. And he said, I will not. I will do no such thing. And he started hugging the Sefer Torah, and the Nazi was screaming at him and pointing his gun at him. I'm going to kill you. And he was just oblivious to the Nazi. And he was dancing. He started dancing with the Sefer Torah. And he was dancing with the Sefer Torah, and the Nazi is screaming. And the Nazi killed him with the Sefer Torah in his hands. And later, a note was found that he had written to himself, I am so sorry about this terrible step that I took and the life that I lived, but I don't have the courage to change my life. I hope that if I didn't live like a Jew, that I should at least die like a Jew. Could you imagine the Pintel Yid that we all inherited from Akedas Yitzchak? Now, one more thing in the introduction. One more pasuk. A pasuk from Navi that we all know. I think the song Kol Amar Hashem Zacharti Lo Chesed Nurayich Avas Klulosayich Lechtech Acharai Bamidbar Be'eretz Lo Zrua. This is, I think, the first pasuk from Navi, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is in Yirmiyahu. It's in Yirmiyahu, Perek Beis, and it's the first pasuk from Navi that's brought in Zechronos. And Hashem is saying, Yirmiyahu is saying in the name of Hashem, I remember for you the love, the chesed that you did with me when you were young, the love when you were my kala, when you came out of Mitzrayim, that you followed me in the Midbar and you trusted me. You followed me and you only took out one portion of dough, and that lasted you for a month. You didn't know that would happen until the month came. And then you trusted Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't tell you to take out any food for the way, so you didn't. Only that piece of that one portion, which B'nais lasted a whole month. Was it a whole month or 40 days? So, and you trusted the Rebbeinu Shalom. You followed him in the Midbar. But why is it saying Loch? Kamar Hashem Zacharti Loch. This is how many years later? 40 years before the Churban. And the Churban was 850 years after they entered Eretz Yisrael, which was 40 years, which you add 40 years because 40 years in the Midbar. So 850 plus 40, 890 years after they left Mitzrayim. So why doesn't it say, I remember for them, and there's Chus, right? Zacharti Lohem. Here it says, Zacharti Loch. I remember for you. He's talking to people 890 years later. Why is he saying Loch? Why? Because he's saying you have the ability to trust Hashem also. You inherited it from them, and you have it in your genes. That means we all, and it's any nebuah that was written down is talking to all generations to come, which means it's talking to us, to you and me, telling us that we have the ability to trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to really have bitachon. That's one of the things to work on, bitachon, trust Hashem. Put aside your worries, throw your worries into His arms, and don't worry about anything. I'm talking to myself. You could listen in. I'm saying, we especially we women, I think, maybe know how to worry. We know how to worry. So I'm trying to tell myself, bitachon, stop worrying. Okay, so I want to tell you about the Hakdama. It says, Tazocher Masei Olam, the Hakdama to Zichronos. The Hakdama to, it starts Zichronos, but the Hakdama to the Psukim. So it says, Hashem, you remember everything. Anyone who has a makzer, you can follow me. Tazocher Masei Olam, Ufoket Kol Yitzurei Kedem. Ein Shichacha L'fnei Chisech Vodecha, there's nothing you forget. The Ein Nistar Mineged Enecha, nothing hidden from you. Zayom Tchilas Ma'asecha Zikaron Yom Rishon. This is the day of the beginning of your creations. This is in memory of the first day. It was really the sixth day of creation, but the purpose of creation became then when Adam was created on Rosh Hashana. Milo Nifkad Kayom Hazeh, who is not remembered, who is not judged on this day, everyone is judged. Now, the next few sentences in Zichronos, it tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes into account the circumstances surrounding the Averos or the Mitzvos. It's not just the Avera you did or the Mitzvah that you did, but all these circumstances surrounding them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes it all into account. So the first thing is, Ki Zecher Kol HaYitzor L'Fanecha Ba. The memory of all creation. How you were created. What is your nature? If you're a hot nature, it's harder for you not to lose your temper. It's not good to lose your temper even if you're a hot nature, but it's worse if you're not a hot nature and you just lose your temper because it's not even your nature, so what are you doing? That's worse. Yeah. Maaseh ish ufkudaso. What a person does in life. For example, if a wealthy person is a Baal Gaiva, which is not good, but it's not as bad as a poor person being a Baal Gaiva, because wealth isn't a sign for Gaiva. It's true. So, a person should overcome the Nisayan, yes, but it's harder. It's harder. When a poor person is usually more nichna, more subjugated, If he becomes a Baal Gaiva, that's worse than if a wealthy person becomes a Baal Gaiva. Because it's less of an asayan for a poor person not to have Gaiva. Va'alilos mitzadei gover. The steps, mitzadei gover. The things that you did with the steps that you took. Did you run to do the mitzvah? Did you do it with enthusiasm? Were your steps exciting? Okay. So you get more schar. Machshavos adam v'sachbulosav. A person's thoughts and his strategies, his plans. Sometimes a person is faced with an assignment just suddenly, and that's, he wasn't planning it, he wasn't scheming anything, and it's no good, he should overcome, but Hashem takes it into account. The person has to do tshuva for it, but he takes it into account. But if a person was scheming an Aveira, if he was planning out an Aveira, that's really bad. However, if he was planning out a mitzvah, if he was making a whole plan, he gets schar not only for the mitzvah itself, but also for the whole plan. And it shows his love for the mitzvah. Then the fifth thing, the fifth circumstance, the fifth condition maybe, the yitzrei ma'alalei ish, the yetzer behind the ma'alalim, the yetzer behind the deeds of the person. In other words, did the yetzer hara come to you, or did you go after the yetzer hara? Were you suddenly faced with an assignment that you were not planning? You didn't put yourself into it. Hashem takes that into account. It's hard. It's harder in a way. It's harder to overcome when it's so sudden, but you didn't plan it. But what about you didn't put yourself into it? What about if a person? But if a person went after the Nisayan, in other words, a person put himself into a difficult situation and saying, into a difficult situation spiritually, and saying, I have backbone. A person should not put himself into an Nisayan. If he has Yiras Shamayim, he's going to stay away from an Nisayan. Okay. Ksiva v'chasima taiva to everybody. Thank you for listening.